keep looking at the waiting room. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining us today for our Early Careers webinar on top tips on how to use social media for your career development. My name is Christy and I'm the Professional Development Coordinator here at CIEEM, and I'm joined by my colleagues Annie and Sophie, who will introduce themselves shortly. Just a quick note from me on the Q&A. So we will be having a Q&A session. So please do pop your questions into the chat throughout the webinar, and then we'll look to answer those as and when we can. Yeah, so that was it from the technical side of things. So I'll now hand over to Annie to begin the session. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, Christy, and great to see so many of you joining us here today. So my name's Annie Robinson. I'm the CIEEM Scotland Project Officer based up in Aberdeenshire in Scotland. So I support members in Scotland and raise the profile of CIEEM in Scotland, working alongside the Scotland Committee and the Scottish Policy Group. But also I do work as a research fellow at the Aberdeen University and working on citizen science and scientific engagement, and I've used social media as one of the tools for scientific engagement. In this webinar, we're going to cover kind of why you should use social media, the importance of building your personal brand, and then we're going to focus in on two social media platforms. There's lots of different ones, but we're going to focus in on LinkedIn and Twitter. And then we'll go over a few ideas of what you can post in terms of content on those platforms. Please do ask any questions in the chat function. We'll try and answer a few of those as we go along after the sections on LinkedIn and then on Twitter, and then we'll address the rest of the questions at the end of the webinar. So I'll hand over to Sophie now.
Annie, so I'm Sophie, so I'm the Digital Marketing and Communications Coordinator here at CIEEM. And prior to that, I used to work for a recruitment company where I actually used to train my colleagues on how to build their personal brands and how to use social media professionally. In that case, it was for us to win business, so it's a little bit different to what we'll be talking about today. But I understand recruitment, I understand what recruiters are looking for in potential employees, and I also understand how to make yourself stand out on social media by using it professionally. So yeah, next slide, Annie. So why should you use social media professionally? So for you guys, the biggest reason why you might use it is to find a new job. So recruiters and employers use social media to check candidates. They basically do a little background check maybe to kind of see, you know, who you are and what your interests are and what kind of person you are basically. And they do that just because they can kind of get more of an insight than just taking a look at your CV. So you can also network with other people. So you could network with people at target organizations, so organizations that you want to break into perhaps. Key thought leaders, so these are the people that are posting a lot and you might be able to learn a lot from them. People at the same stage of careers as you for a bit of inspiration, a bit of peer-to-peer support. But as well as that, you know, your lecturers, your peers, your past colleagues, your present colleagues, and all of that fun stuff. So following and engaging with organizations and people on social media is a great way to learn about companies, different sectors, and basically gives you insight to find where you want to work. So we've got a couple of pie charts here. So 85% of jobs are filled through networking and 70% of jobs are never even published online. Pretty crazy statistics. So that really does just go to show how important networking is and how the sooner you build one, the better really. And you can also use social media to kind of make yourself stand out from the crowd. So if you're connecting with all the right people and you're using social media to promote yourself and your passion, your expertise, your interests, that kind of thing, then you're going to stand out in the employer's mind over someone who just emails a CV and that's about it. Next slide, please. So building your personal brand. So what exactly is your personal brand? Your personal brand helps to communicate who you are, what you stand for, and what your values are. So it's essentially how you promote yourself, and it encompasses a unique combination of your skills, your experience, your personality, your background, and how you present all of that to the outside world. So it's all about building your reputation and what you stand for. So what do you want to be known for? So the girl that's a fantastic photographer, the guy that's an expert on habitat surveys, or someone who just likes to go down the pub and have a few drinks. You know, it's really important to sort of play to your strengths. And yes, so 85% of hiring managers report that a job candidate's personal brand actually influences their hiring decision. So this just goes to show how important and crucial your reputation and your brand identity is. So building your personal brand, that can, oh, if you go back one, sorry. Building your personal brand can sound a little bit scary. And you might be thinking, well, where do I begin? So I think the best place to start is to kind of ask yourself, what do you want to be known for? And what do you want employers to remember about you when they come to your social media profile and then they leave? And what do you want them to know about you? And then I would kind of work backwards from there. So like I said earlier, are you a fantastic habitat surveyor? Are you interested in a particular species? Do you have more experience than your peers in X, Y, and Z? Basically play to your strengths, work backwards from there, and that should help to inform what you post. Thanks, Annie. So being professional. So that goes without saying. So choose your email and usernames wisely. So for example, stantheman@gmail.com isn't appropriate or professional, but stansmith@gmail.com is. So just always have in the back of your head, reputation, what do you want people to remember you by, and what impression do you want to give? And think about what you want to post before you post it. This goes for commenting on other people's posts as well. So always think about how it's going to be perceived by others and whether it's the impression that you want to give them.
So that's just left on.
Keep your personal and professional lives separate. So it might be a good idea to set up 2 different accounts. So maybe a professional Twitter account and a personal Twitter account. And it might be worth just, oh, sorry, has someone come off mute? Okay, perfect, thanks. So a professional Twitter account and a personal Twitter account, and just make sure that if there's anything you don't want to show on your personal account, maybe check your privacy settings and just make it private. I would recommend doing that anyway on your personal social media accounts when you're looking for a new job. And then also do a quick search for yourself online and see what comes up in the search results. You know, is there like a really embarrassing photo from 5 years ago? Or is there an embarrassing YouTube channel that you created with your friends when, you know, you were 13 years old and you'd rather not have that out there in the world anymore? It might be worth just going back and deleting that. Yeah, next slide, please. Thank you. So like Annie said, we're breaking this up into 2 different sections. So I'll be covering LinkedIn, and then Annie will come in shortly and talk about Twitter. But LinkedIn is essentially
Sophie, sorry, before we start, could we just have the polls launched, please?
Yeah, go for it.
So Christy, could you launch the poll?
Yeah.
Christy just doing it in the background. We've got a poll to look at how many of you have already got LinkedIn and how many have got Twitter. Okay, I would carry on and we can always come back to it.
Yep, you sure? Okay. So LinkedIn, we'll talk about LinkedIn first. So this is basically, oh no, here we go. If you could just fill in the poll, it should flash up on your screen. and we should be able to reveal the answers. So we'll give you a minute or so. Okay, so it looks like the vast majority don't have a professional Twitter account. There should be another one, Christy, about LinkedIn next. Perfect. If you'd all just like to fill out this one as well, just so we can see what we're working with. That doesn't surprise me. Obviously, LinkedIn is the more go-to professional platform. But yeah, that's great to see that 76% of you are already on LinkedIn and you've already got a professional account. I'll just get right on into the LinkedIn section then. So what should your profile look like? So LinkedIn is essentially the online version of your CV. So it should encompass a short little introduction to yourself in the about section, your education, your work experience, any volunteering opportunities that you've undertaken, your skills and highlights from work or education. And you also need to make sure that you've got a professional looking headshot. So here's some random guy's profile that I've just grabbed off LinkedIn. But you can see he's got a nice looking profile picture. You know, it's professional. He's facing the camera. He's wearing appropriate clothing, that kind of thing. It's worth making sure that your photo is up to date. Just because if you leave it blank, you're less likely to stand out in the mind of the employer or the recruiter. And you also need to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date. So as up to date as your CV is, otherwise one or the other is going to sort of catch you out. Make sure that it's consistent across both so that the recruiter or the employer can get what they need straight away. You can also add weight to your profile in a way that a normal CV doesn't, by getting your skills endorsed or recommended by your peers, lecturers, managers, colleagues, that kind of thing. So this is essentially where they recommend you and confirm that you can do the things that you say you can. And then you can also get recommendations. So this is where people can leave like a short little paragraph kind of detailing your character and your experience and what you like to work with. Next slide, please. You can also join groups relating to ecology and environmental management. So you can use this to kind of learn from others, or you can use it as a networking opportunity. You can comment on posts, engage with people, message them, connect with them. For example, why not join the CIEEM group? You can connect and follow and engage with accounts, whether that's a company or a personal account. So it's all about getting on their radar, because you never know who they might know and you never know what jobs they know about, etc. There's no harm in searching for particular people or people with particular job titles, employees who work at specific companies that you want to enter into, and just send them a short little message introducing yourself and saying it would be great to maybe have a little call or to find out how they got to be where they are. And you can also ask them then, whether they can let you know if there's any jobs coming up in the pipeline. Next slide, please. So with LinkedIn, you can also feature posts as well. I'm not sure if everyone knows about this, but the featured section comes under the about section on your profile. And this is where you can effectively feature your favorite posts on your profile. So any recruiters or employers who are taking a look at your profile can immediately see it. So this could be really handy if you want to give a certain first impression or highlight a piece of work or a particular project that you're proud of. This is just a screenshot from my account. So these posts are pretty old now. I was writing them in my last job, but you kind of get the idea. And to feature a post, all you need to do is click in the top right-hand corner of the post with the 3 dots, the ellipsis. Just click on that, and then you can press feature on top of profile, and they will automatically appear on here. And then you can scroll through them, so there's not a limit as such. But yeah. Next slide, Annie.
So I think we'll move straight on to Twitter, and we'll do questions at the end, if that's okay. So thank you, Sophie, for that introduction to LinkedIn, and fabulous to see 3/4 of you are already using LinkedIn professionally. So you've already taken that first step, and hopefully at the end, we're going to be sharing some top tips amongst us as to how you found things working for you. So it was interesting to see less of you using Twitter. So I'll explore a bit now about what Twitter is and how you can make Twitter work for you. So Twitter is a great platform for keeping up with what's going on in the sector, getting your message out there, and it's a really great networking tool. And it's a potentially slightly different audience than LinkedIn, as a survey found on Twitter that up to 40% of the followers of ecological scientists may be non-scientists, the media or environmental groups. And Twitter is the main social media platform used by journalists and reporters. So it's where you're most likely to interact them. So if you want a chance of having your research project at university or some work picked up by a media outlet, Twitter is a really good place to start sharing. It's a great way of getting your name out there and potentially standing out from the crowds, as Sophie said, like with LinkedIn. So imagine as an employer, you've got several hundred applications to review. Any name that they recognize from social media just might get that additional consideration and get them to look at your CV or application in more detail. So the first thing to do is to set up an account. So it's as simple as visit twitter.com and click sign up. You add your name and email, contact number, and the name you enter is not your username. Twitter will automatically generate that based on the name given, but you can easily edit that once you finish the account. For your profile picture, as Sophie says, use a recent picture of yourself and a background picture related to your interests. So I came across an example recently of a student that I did actually know, but I didn't recognize her from her photo. She had a big hat on, so I couldn't see her face clearly. And as soon as I did realize, I did follow her. So it is really important to use a good photo. So I'm going to use a couple of examples now of 2 prolific Twitterers that I follow. So we've got Davy McCracken on the left and Gus Routledge on the right. Davy is very well established at CIEEM, an expert in upland ecology related to agriculture. Gus is earlier on his career. I actually met him when he was a student at the Scottish Royal Agricultural College. And I would say he's actually got where he is by using social media effectively. So I just wanted to give some examples from their accounts. So for Davy's one, I can immediately see he's got a really clear profile picture. It looks exactly like him as he is today. And his background picture confirms what I know. He works in the uplands, Scottish uplands, is an agricultural expert. So those pictures tell me who he is and what he does. Gus is, the picture's not as clear to see. Ideally, as I said, Twitter will assign you a username. So I would ideally use your name. I don't actually, but if you don't, it's fine. But that photo is even more important then, so that when people come across you at a conference, they can enter that into Twitter and have a look. You can include any organisation affiliation and links. So you can see Gus's one, he's included Scotland, the big picture. If you're already working and are based with an organisation, you might want to add that your comments are personal. So like Davy's here, as his comments are personal and not SIUC's, or views of my own, or something like that. So that, it's your own views rather than your organisational perspective. If you've got a blog, fantastic, add it to Twitter. So Gus has got one here. and any relevant hashtags that quickly sum up what you're all about. So I think on my one, I've got citizen science as one of my things. So once you've got your account set up, your first thing then is to post a couple of tweets. So that way, once you start following people, they can look at your account and see if they want to follow you too. You don't want to start following people, they look at you and you've got nothing there, so they don't know what you're all about. So what might you want to tweet? So share some highlights from what you're studying or your first steps into work. A field course that you've been on, something that a citizen science project you've been involved in, or a volunteer group that you're involved in, any wildlife that you've seen that's grabbed your interest. If there's, keep an eye out on for any interesting articles in newspapers or any scientific papers that have grabbed your interest. They're really good to share and get that information out there. And when you do so, it's always really good to ask a question or put a comment in. So, you know, if you've read a CIEEM blog recently and it grabbed your attention, you thought, oh, it's really interesting, retweet it and share your thoughts. And even more importantly, ask what other people think. So it's a way of getting a conversation going and some engagement. The more you tweet, the more confident you'll get, and you'll start experimenting, doing lots of different things. Do you think with every time that you tweet, what can you do to make it more engaging? So the old adage of a picture tells 1,000 words really is the case on social media. It does help posts stand out. So a tip from me is that when you're out and about, just start taking photos and just compile a folder of lots of different photos of species, habitats, landscapes, anything, so that you've got a pool of photos that when you want to tweet about something, you think, oh, actually, I've got a photo that I can use to go alongside that. You don't have to be a great photographer. You know, it's often just, you know, the quality is not, it's just the main thing of getting it on there. Videos are brilliant as well. There is a limit on Twitter. You can only upload videos that are 140 seconds long, so that's 2 minutes 20. But they are much more effective if you embed them in Twitter rather than sending to another site, because then you can lose that audience. So try and keep them short and sweet. They generally say you've got about 10 to 20 seconds to grab people's attention with a video. So it's making it really punchy at the beginning. I had a paper I published on pollinators this January, and we tweeted about it from our cross-poly accounts, and you know, got lots of interest. But the university then did a video compiling sort of the research highlights. It's really short, but it had 7,000 views within a week. So it had far greater reach and impact than anything we could do by just posting ourselves. So short videos are a really great way. And if any of you attended the Science Communication for Ecologists webinar yesterday, a lot about how to compile those videos was covered in that. So you can also look at the recording as well. Using hashtags. So they're an effective way of finding content, and if used effectively can help you expand your Twitter audience. So look at what other hashtags people are using and how effective they are, and then you can use those to help build up your coverage. So how do you build your network? So start following people in the area of work that you're interested in and comment on their posts. Look at who they're retweeting, see if you're interested in what them and follow them. Twitter does also suggest new accounts on the right hand side based on your activity and the current accounts you follow. So it's worth looking at that. Sometimes they come up with some really random ones, but it's worth, you may get some additional ideas. So it's quite simple to actually build up a network by following those things. Tagging people. So don't be afraid to tag people in your posts. So if you really want people to see what you're posting, I highly recommend tagging people. So you can tag them in your actual tweet itself, but that does take up characters. So with tweets, you only get 280 characters. And even the spaces between the words count in that character count. So it very quickly uses up those characters. So you can tag 10 people and organizations in a tweet, in an image. So that's a great way of tagging people in without using up your character limit. Some people and organizations don't allow you to tag them in images, so do just be mindful of that. You may need to tag them in the actual tweet itself. So I'm just going to show you some examples now of various tweets and what can work. So next Tuesday, we've got a Scottish Member Network event, which we put on Twitter here. And we have a speaker, Richard Lilly from Project Seagrass. So we tagged them in the tweet. And within 10 minutes or so, both Richard Lilly and Project Seagrass had retweeted the tweet. And it just therefore means that you reach a much wider audience. They'll have different followers than CIEEM has, and a different audience. So it just allows you to get your message out there much more effectively. There's a webinar this afternoon, in fact. It's very much webinar week at CIEEM this week. And Sophie will have put a post out about this webinar. Now, it just so happens that I know 2 of the 3 panelists that are speaking. So I retweeted the CIEEM tweet, tagged in those speakers, and then they then retweeted, and it reached again a wider audience and a different network. And it is a thing that you do need to post the same thing several times. Sophie will be able to advise on this, but you know, people won't necessarily see things once. They do need to see things a couple of times. So this is a good way of embedding it in without keeping it exactly the same. And once you've done your tweet, it doesn't stop there. So look out for people liking your tweets or retweeting your tweets. If they comment and then retweet, then if you like what they've put about your tweet, then you can retweet it again. People might post about events that you're involved in, so do keep an eye out on that. And again, you can retweet. So I'm just going to use some examples on the next slide. We had our Scottish conference at the beginning of October. It was Greening Our Grey, so building green infrastructure into our urban environments. So here on the left, you can see Nature Scot. They had 3 speakers at the event, so they did a post talking about some of their speakers. And then Francesca, who's the CEO of Nature Scot, did a post retweeting the Nature Scot post going, fantastic CIEEM Net conference, great to see such a strong Nature Scot presence, looking forward to being there on Thursday. So that had far more power than us just saying, oh, great to see lots of Nature Scot speakers being involved. So we then, of course, can retweet that, and it's adding to our message. Another example here. On the right, we had a panel discussion at the end, and we had a series of great panelists, including Mary McCallan, who's the Scottish Minister for Environment and Land Reform, who retweeted our tweet, commented, great discussion, thanks for inviting me along. Brilliant, huge amount of impact, so that we could retweet that. So do keep an eye out and see what people are saying about your tweets. Twitter thread. So a thread on Twitter is a series of connected tweets by a person or organization. With a thread, you can connect multiple tweets together and provide additional content, an update, or an extended point. So maybe you can't get your message in one tweet, so you can add a few tweets together and link them together. So I would recommend, as in Nature Scot have done here, of numbering the tweets. So it just highlights that it's a, part of a selection of tweets together. So again, they just did 4 tweets related to the keynote speech. So it is a good way, again, can be used to get a bit of a conversation going with your audience as well. So when you're building up your network, to begin with, I would advise be a little bit selective, don't get carried away and just follow everyone. Your Twitter feed will become very full. I've just had a quick look since I've been on this webinar. I've got over 100 tweets have appeared on my Twitter thread. So how do you make sure you don't miss those posts? So you'll see there's a little bell button here. I've just highlighted it, turning on notifications. So for people that you really want to make sure that you don't miss what they're tweeting, I highly recommend just turning on notifications, because otherwise you will miss people's posts. So, as Twitter is also a great medium for spotting job opportunities, Then for those organizations posting, you definitely want to probably turn the notifications on so you don't miss any posts from that. Just related to that, in terms of job hunting, if you've posted a tweet that is really important or sums up exactly what you're all about, you can make it a pinned tweet, and that means it stays at the top of your Twitter thread, so that when people visit your page, it's the first thing that they see. So that allows you to use your pinned tweet as a bit of an expansion of your bio or your sort of business card, your elevator pitch, so what you're all about. And it just means that then people can immediately see who you are, what you're about, and then they can, before they move on to anything else. You can change the settings on Twitter to see the most recent or the most engaging posts. There's 3 little stars on the top right hand corner. So play about with the settings, see what works for you. It is worth, so I'll just go back one, it is worth reflecting actually how you're getting on with Twitter, just to see how, you know, what you're posting, what's working well. So you can visit analytics.twitter.com, or on the left hand side of your account you'll see analytics, and it will pull, Twitter will pull up your top tweets, your mentions, your followers, any media tweets. It's basically a 28-day summary of your impressions, so how powerful what you're doing is. So it is worth looking at because it can tell you, you know, what's working for you and your audience. So what hashtags you use help you get the most impressions. The posts that you put on where you included a photo, were those actually much more successful? So what's making your tweets work and which ones are not having a huge amount of impact? Sometimes it can be as simple as what time of day you post, when you post, but it is a good way of just every so often just having a look at. And I'm just going to share a couple of top tips from me before I move on, because I'm going to be asking you at the end to share your top tips as well. So with Twitter, unlike other social media platforms, once you post it, you can edit it. So my top tip is just, spending a moment and rereading it and making sure you've tagged in everyone that you do. The only way you can do it is actually delete the post. You can edit it. So that's a real shame to do that if you've already got people liking and engaging in the post. Another top tip is if there's a conference or an event that you want to go to, but you can't, check out if they've got a hashtag for the event. And it gives you a little synopsis of what happened in the day. So like at the conference recently, we had Greening Our Grey. I posted all throughout the 2 days. Lots of participants posted as well. So it gives you a feeling on what's happening. And if you're going to an event, a conference or a webinar or something, see if there is a hashtag and just have a go at tweeting using that affiliated hashtag. Because again, it just means that it's very obvious that you're at an event, and again, increases your profile. So I'm now going to hand over to Sophie, who's going to cover more ideas on what to post.
Sunny. So I've kind of broken this up into students and early careers. I don't know how much of either we have on this webinar today. But yeah, so this page is for students basically. So here are a couple of examples. This is actually my best friend who's just completed a master's in marine conservation and management. And her course was actually really, really good at encouraging the students to kind of build their personal brands, tweet about what they're doing, that kind of thing. So she's already sort of ahead of the game in a way at using social media professionally. So here she's kind of commented on a new research paper that came out about sea turtles. So that's her kind of favorite species. And then she's also documented how she went into schools as part of her final major research project. And she worked with over 150 students. And so she kind of just summarized that and reflected on that, which I thought was great. So my advice to you is to basically share, if you're a student, share any highlights from your course. You know, what did your lecture cover in the morning? That might be a good way to kind of start. You know, what did you study earlier? And could you turn that into a post? you know, make sure that you're tagging your lecturers and your university accounts as well if you can. If you volunteer or work part-time, you know, there's no harm in sort of talking about that and sharing what you're learning and everything like that. And make sure that you're sharing pictures as well. Like if you've got any pictures from the field or anything, that, you know, photo posts, as Annie touched on, usually go down a lot better than just standard text posts. Next, please. Yeah, thank you. So here are actually a few screenshots from a few early career professionals that I met at our autumn conference last week. So here Lauren has kind of reflected on her first 6 months on the job, what she's been up to, what she's learned, that kind of thing, which was quite successful. And she's also documented that she has just completed a CIEEM course in plant identification. So anything like that, obviously on your paper CV, you're kind of sort of limited to what you can put on. You know, you don't want to go over the 2 pages, but LinkedIn and Twitter are really great to kind of document every single little thing that you're doing. So, you know, every course that you've undertaken, every university lecture that you've gone to. I should have also mentioned that, sorry, that this slide going forwards now is more for early careers. Next slide, please, Annie. So carrying on from early careers, Abby, who I also met at the autumn conference, has documented that she went to our autumn conference last week. So she shared how she had a great time and how, you know, it's kind of helped her in her career. She shared a few photos, and then here's an example of me, little baby me from over 2 years ago when I graduated. So I shared that I'd graduated and I had already found my my first job out of uni at this point. So I kind of reflected on that and how I felt, you know, said I was so lucky to already be a month into my career and that kind of thing. So I think the best way to get ideas about what to post is just to think about your professional social media accounts as a diary or a reflection almost. So keep asking yourself, what have I learned? And what do I find most enjoyable? What am I passionate about? And kind of turn that into a short little post and yeah, work backwards from there. I think that's it. Thank you. Oh, we're at the end.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sophie. I've just stopped sharing there. And I was just going to open up now. We're delighted to be joined by 2 people from our CIEEM student and early career focus group. So we've got Ella Glover and Eliza Waldron, who are going to share some of their top tips for breaking into the sector using social media. So Ella, could I hand over to you?
Hi, yeah. Thank you, Annie and Sophie, for that presentation. There's definitely some great tips in there that I'll be using going forwards. You've definitely covered a lot of the things. Making use of the features on Twitter and LinkedIn are really, really important. I think the most important thing I would say is actually just don't be afraid to engage with people. People are generally posting online about stuff that they are very passionate about. So don't be afraid to kind of comment, reply, ask more. Like, obviously, if you're approaching people on LinkedIn, be respectful of their time and be polite. But if you see someone who's at a career stage that you'd like to be at, I think it's a good idea that you can sometimes send them a message, say, if you have the time, it would be really great to talk about your experiences and how you got there, and if they have any tips that could be relevant to you. And yeah, as long as you're respectful about it, people are usually always really happy to help out. They're usually passionate about what they're doing. I think particularly in ecology and environmental science, that's the case, that we're quite lucky that people are generally very friendly. Another tip I'd say similarly is you can then use, if you're job searching and a company is posting online, you can use that to help tailor your application to them. So the company that I work for, I'd seen that they'd posted on LinkedIn, one of the employees had done like a blog post recently about moving from academia into ecological consultancy. And I used that kind of as like an introduction into why I wanted the job that I was applying for. And I think it's a very good idea to kind of tailor job applications if your employer or someone you're applying for has an online presence. I think that can be a really good way to make yourself stand out from people just applying without that kind of personalization of an application. So I think those would be my top 2 tips for using social media as an early career.
Thanks, Ella. That's great. Yeah, really useful, and great to see that you've already managed to get that first job, having left university recently. So, Eliza, are you on the line?
Yeah, so thank you again for that presentation. It was really useful, even for someone that's already in their career, to learn about how you can go forward and other ways of getting there. It's really interesting to learn about. The first thing I would say is don't disregard Facebook and Instagram, because although they're not the most professional platforms of social media, I actually got my job through Facebook. So there's a lot of groups you can join that just means you can follow the trends of what's happening in work. And I posted a couple of years ago, just introduced myself onto the British Ecologist Facebook page, just said I was looking for work. And then a few people commented, and I got in touch with who they had commented on their company they worked for, and applied directly through them. And then unfortunately didn't get it, but I stayed in touch with the company that I'd made contact with. And then over time, I sort of followed them on social media. And then as soon as I knew they were recruiting again, I reapplied and said, look, it's been a year since I last applied. And since then I've done this, this, and this. And they were like, it's great you stayed in touch. It's been really good to see you develop over the year, and we'd like to take you on from there. So I wouldn't disregard Facebook groups. And also similarly with Instagram, I go out with the Botanical Society of Britain and Ireland quite a lot to do some plant ID skills. And every time I go out, I use my Instagram stories or post, I'll tag them as well, because it means you can also find people that are similarly interested in plants and botany, and then you can network that way. So that's my first sort of topic, is don't disregard them. And then the second thing is obviously online, everything you post gets tagged back to your name. So everything that I've posted generally has been positive. I don't like to post and be negative about ideas. I know HS2 is very controversial, but people that post negative things about themselves and the companies they apply.
Please walk away at night when you have finished up a cook's time tomorrow, Thursday.
So yeah, I just avoid saying anything negative, to be honest. It's okay to have an opinion, but it's going to benefit you more in the long run if you have a positive opinion and a positive outlook on things, instead of posting negative feedback about companies or projects. So that would be my 2 top tips.
Brilliant, thank you, Eliza, and great to hear about your experience of getting a job via social media. Yeah, certainly there are a huge number of groups on Facebook. You might find local conservation groups. We have up here a biodiversity partnership group that posts lots on sort of wildlife gardening, and one that posts more about events and things like that. So you can get involved locally to gain some work experience, but also national groups as well. Certainly in terms of CIEEM, our social media covers Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. We haven't gone into Instagram yet. There have been calls for it, but there is a yet. So there is a question coming from Molly Crilly, so thank you for that. So Sophie, do you think that Instagram is at all beneficial? I'm the photography girl, so Instagram has always been my go-to. What do you think?
I definitely think that Instagram is great. Obviously, Instagram is a visual platform. LinkedIn and Twitter, not so much. Instagram is purely, curated visual content. So if you've got great photos, absolutely share them. I can imagine how amazing your feed will look with all your amazing photos on. Make sure that you're using hashtags and tagging organizations in, using the geotag for like the location. And yeah, there's no reason why you can't use Instagram in a professional manner. You can also set up a business account. I think it's like a business profile. So then you can see stats, how many people are engaging with your posts and viewing it and that kind of thing, which would be really helpful and encouraging. But yeah, while we focused on Twitter and LinkedIn today, there's no reason why Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, there's no reason why any other channel wouldn't work for you. It really does just depend on, what you want to be known for and what you can kind of bring to the table, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's very much the case. See which one works for you. And if you're creating the content anyway and put it on Instagram, put it on Twitter as well. You know, you can link to Instagram on Twitter, or you can just use the photos that you've used and put it on Twitter as well. So you'll find that they'll have different audiences. So you want to capture, for the effort that you're putting in on social media, you want to make the most of that effort. So yeah, we've got some more questions coming in, which is fantastic. If people do want to ask the questions themselves, so Libby Wilcox, if you want to turn on your microphone, and you can all turn on your videos now so we can see who we're talking to, that would be great. If Libby's there. If not, I can pose it.
Yes, hi. It was just a question because I am an early career ecologist, but I'm not actively looking for a job. I currently have a job, and I'm trying to, work my way up. But I'm looking. My company has asked me to they've been asking people to post on LinkedIn to like raise their profile. And I was just wondering if anybody had advice for that aspect of using LinkedIn rather than as a kind of way of getting a job.
Yeah, so if I start off, if you're going out and doing field visits, doing any site surveys, I noticed one post on LinkedIn yesterday. It was actually from WSP, someone going out using drones and VR headsets, and it got a huge amount of coverage quite quickly. So even sharing the work that you're doing as part of your organization is a really good way to help the company raise their profile of the work that they're undertaking, but also reflects on you and your experiences. So yeah, as I think Sophie said, it's almost a little bit of a diary, but just highlighting some of the different activities that you're doing is really valuable. Sophie, have you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, like I said at the start, I used to work at a recruitment company, and I used to help everyone to kind of build their personal brands. And oh, where's the question gone? And that was mainly to raise the awareness of our business, not so much as the individuals, but if 5 people from my company were posting and sharing their expertise and leadership, and linking through to our website and our social media platforms, then that automatically kind of bolsters the sort of credibility of the business. So, I think Annie does this as well. Like Annie does this great on LinkedIn and Twitter. She's always sharing things from the main CIEEM sort of LinkedIn, Twitter accounts, always putting her opinion on it and promoting it to her audience, because she understands, it's good for our business, but it also, might be going out to more targeted people that way. So yeah, I don't think there's any reason why, you can't sort of post as an employee or as someone who's kind of already in their sort of first, second, third jobs. I think, yeah, like Annie said, just kind of reflecting on what you're doing day in, day out of your job, and kind of sharing that, because that also helps to future-proof your career as well. It might not be the main reason why you're doing it, but in 5 years' time, 2 years' time, you might be thinking it might be time to move on or something like that. And you might, by posting, you might have caught the eye of potential new employers as well. So that's quite a good way of looking at it as well. Yeah, I hope that answered that question.
Thank you,
yeah,
Sophie.
thank you.
No worries.
Got a question from Catherine. Catherine, do you want to ask your question? I can ask it for you anyway. So I was just wondering how you would decide which platform to use for certain posts, or would you use identical posts for both LinkedIn and Twitter? This is a fascinating one, and it's one that I've noticed. So Sophie's only been in post, what, a month, 2 months now? And
almost
we've
3 months.
Oh, was it? Oh, goodness. Time does fly. and there's definitely different ways of doing it. So remember when I said that they generally say you need to see something 3 times before it will really register with people, and the amount of times that I speak to CIEEM members and they said, oh, we didn't know anything about this. And I'm like, okay, it was in the newsletter, it's been on social media, it's been in our Scottish newsletter. It really does take multiple times, because we are in a society with information overload. It's really hard to get through to people, and it is repeating it at different times. Now, certainly at CIEEM, we used to put the same post out at the same time on Twitter and LinkedIn. I've already noticed that Sophie's playing about a little bit and is putting things on Twitter, and then the next day you might put it on LinkedIn. It's using Hootsuite as a platform where you can post to multiple platforms at the same time. So that's something to consider, that if you really do want to get into social media, there are different tools out there where you can post to multiple platforms and you can schedule those posts. So yes, you can do identical posts. Have a look at your followers. If you've got pretty much the same followers on LinkedIn and Twitter, play about with it a little bit. Maybe do it at different times. Maybe change the content slightly over time. But yeah, if you've got very similar followers on both, I would recommend trying to do it at slightly different times. But I'll hand over to Sophie, because she obviously has been using that as a tool. So her experiences on that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Annie. Kind of experiment with maybe what time you post, because obviously not everyone's going to be on Twitter to see your post at the same time, and not everyone's going to be on LinkedIn to see that post at the same time. So kind of vary that in that sense. Yeah, I don't see the harm in posting identical posts for LinkedIn and Twitter. For me, I see Twitter as more kind of reactive and in the now. So maybe you are out on a site visit or a field visit and you can kind of log on quickly and update something, whereas LinkedIn might be, an end of the week reflection post, and it's worth noting as well that Twitter you have a 280 character limit, whereas LinkedIn, you can kind of put something a little bit more long form and reflective. So you might be posting the same thing or linking back to the same article or using the same pictures, but you can play around with the structure a little bit more, because LinkedIn is more long form content. It's also worth noting as well, I've just thought of this with LinkedIn, if you are posting a long sort of LinkedIn post, it's good to kind of break up your paragraphs into sort of 1 or 2 lines. I know that's not grammatically correct, but from a social media standpoint, it makes it so much easier when people are scrolling down their LinkedIn feeds. When text is broken up, it's so much easier to read. It's so much more digestible. So yeah, just bear that in mind when you're writing your LinkedIn posts, because no one really has time to read, an essay, a big chunky paragraph. But if you break it up into more digestible chunks, yeah, that should definitely help. Yeah. We got any more questions?
Yeah, well, we've got a comment coming from Matthew in response to Catherine. And sorry, Catherine, I've seen your response about your microphone not working. So Matthew's saying, seeing companies doing exactly that through different channels, so exactly the same post, due to having different viewers on both, or about wanting who to target, so work or social media. So yeah, there's definitely different ways of doing it, and you'll find out, I'll post things on Twitter and they get little engagement. I'll post exactly the same thing on LinkedIn and it gets a huge amount of engagement. It is dependent, I think, and it's not something that I've really got a full understanding of quite yet, on actually when to post. I have notifications from a lot of MSPs and Scottish Government officials, because I do quite a lot of work in policy. And I'll often find my phone will go ping, ping, ping in the evening, because that seems to be when all the MSPs post online. They've obviously finished their day in their constituency and then they're doing their other government roles. You will start to realise, the people that you follow, when they post, maybe it's a Friday lunchtime, so they'll do it lunchtimes, evenings, whenever. So, that's just something that you'll build up that knowledge as you do it, and then as to, what days are more effective. So, even like when I put out a Scottish newsletter, the ones that I put out on a Thursday are much more successful than ones going out on a Monday. You can imagine getting to work on a Monday morning, you've got loads of stuff to do. Are you really going to open a newsletter that comes in? So yeah, there's lots of things, and it is a case of just playing about and trying different things and seeing what works for you. Anyone got any top tips that they've come across, or things that they've done that they would like to share? Right, so we've got one here coming in from Molly. So it's difficult to get survey experience where you live. Do you think that CIEEM courses and social media can help? There seems to be a much smaller community of ecologists in the west of Ireland. Yes, definitely. You know, I would say that grab as many opportunities as you can. You know, social media can be a way of connecting with other ecologists. You might find there's different sort of voluntary groups that you can get involved with. If there's a member network event coming up, I know we've had to do most of them online in the last 18 months, but when they do start happening in person as well, try and get along to one of the member network events, because certainly the ones that we do, sometimes it's a case of going out in the field and trying out some methodology, so some habitat surveying or looking for a particular species, say. But again, even with the online events at the moment, certainly the member network events are quite informal occasions, and again, it's just a good way of meeting other people that are actually working in the field. We did one in a marine quiz actually at the start of this year, and it was fascinating because we had everything from students that were, you know, in the first year of their studies to a retired professor in marine biology. And I thought afterwards, when would you ever get those mix of people together at an event? And it's where you can then, you know, build and get some of the knowledge from other people. So we did, certainly in terms of survey experience and identification experience, I don't know if you come across, Molly, we did a leaflet at the start of the pandemic, which compiled all the different sort of voluntary recording initiatives you can be involved in, and survey identification help, which is all free and online. So do check that out. It's on our student pages under the useful resources. And that, for all the different species and taxonomic groups, just gave you links to various sites so that you can help with your species and survey experience. Anyone else got any top tips that they want to share?
I think as well, if you guys all want to put your own social media accounts in the comments, you can all go and follow each other and sort of check each other out and see what each other's posting. That might be quite a nice thing to do. So yeah, feel free to do that. I think we've also got one more poll, Christy.
Yes, we do. I shall launch the poll now.
So this is just asking you, so after this webinar, do you feel more confident to use Twitter and LinkedIn now? And we'll have a look at the results.
So thanks, Molly, for sharing your Instagram accounts.
Oh, good. We've done our job then. That's great to see. That's really encouraging. Hopefully you can come away with some little nuggets to kind of, yeah, take away and use now. And yeah, feel free to follow me and Annie. I'm not on Twitter, but feel free to connect with both of us on LinkedIn and follow Annie on Twitter, and we can follow you back.
So
yeah.
my Twitter is Ecology Annie. I don't know why I thought of that at the time, but yeah, I'm stuck with it now.
And if you just search for our names on LinkedIn, we should come up. So
yeah. So it's really interesting seeing there's quite a few of you who've got Instagram accounts. So Sophie, I think we need to start working on Instagram a bit more at CIEEM.
Yes, that is the plan for the new year, to kind of put a strategy in place for Instagram. So when we do launch, don't forget to come and follow us.
Yeah, so hopefully if we can start following some of those accounts, we'll get a bit of a network forming just even from this event itself.
Okay, well, the hour's up, so I don't know about you, Annie, but I think we're good to go.
Yeah. It's great to see just from those comments. Some of you were going to have a go at opening a Twitter account, just see how you get on. It is a case of just posting those few initial posts and then looking and getting ideas from everyone. So thanks everyone for joining today. It's been really nice to sort of reflect on social media and how we can use it. And I would say it's not a case of just using it at the start of your career to get your job. It's carrying it on all the way through. The amount that I learn and pick up on sort of policy and sector news stuff through Twitter and LinkedIn in particular, you know, it all helps you're keeping up to date with what's going on in the profession. So yeah, it's not one thing to stop. So keep going all the way throughout your career. So thank you everyone for joining. Christy, I'm sure we'll be sending out a feedback form and a recording of the event to you in the next few days. So do please complete that. And yeah, thank you. Anything else to say, Christy?
No, I think you said it. Thank you, Annie and Sophie, and everyone for joining us today. It's been really great to see you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.